Before we really get into this, let me ask you something. How many games actually let you live the fantasy they promise? Not just play a character, not just follow a checklist of quests, but actually become something else. Because Vampire's Bloodlord Rising is one of those games that doesn't just tell you you're a vampire, it constantly reminds you of it through every decision you make, every system you interact with, and every consequence that follows. And if you stay until the end of this video, you'll see why this game is much more about identity and power than it first appears. At its core, Vampire's Bloodlord Rising is an open-world action RPG mixed with survival, management, and strong narrative choices. You step into the role of Dragos, a man turned into a vampire after surviving a brutal attack. And from the very beginning, the game frames you as someone caught between two worlds. You're no longer human, but you still remember what it meant to be one. That tension drives almost everything the game does. This isn't just about hunting enemies and leveling up, it's about deciding what kind of ruler you're going to become in a land where vampires sit at the top of the food chain. The setting, Sangavia, feels deliberately inspired by Balkan folklore and gothic fantasy, and it gives the world a distinct identity. You're not in a generic medieval map. You're moving through forests, mountains, villages, dungeons, and swamps that feel hostile, grounded, and lived in. There's a sense that this world existed long before you arrived, and it will keep moving whether you dominate it or not. Exploration plays a big role here. You're constantly rewarded for straying off the main path, whether that's uncovering side stories, hidden dangers, or opportunities to expand your influence. Gameplay-wise, the experience balances action combat with long-term planning. Combat makes you feel powerful without turning you into an unstoppable god right away. As a vampire, you have access to superhuman abilities like enhanced speed, strength, heightened senses, and even the ability to transform into a bat and fly across the world. These powers aren't just flashy tools. They fundamentally change how you move through the environment and approach encounters. You're faster, more lethal, and more aware than any human, and the game leans into that fantasy hard. But power always comes with hunger. Blood isn't just a visual theme here, it's a mechanical and narrative driver. Feeding matters. Who you feed on matters. Whether you give in to your thirst or try to control it directly affects how the world reacts to you. Villagers remember your actions. Your reputation shifts. Fear spreads or loyalty grows. The game constantly asks you whether you want to rule through terror or through control and protection, and it never gives you an easy answer. Managing your followers is just as important as managing your castle. You decide who joins your vampire family, who becomes a servant, and who doesn't survive the night. Each follower has strengths and weaknesses, and choosing the wrong people can weaken your rule. This adds a layer of strategy and moral weight that goes beyond simple stat optimization. These aren't just units, they're characters whose fates are directly tied to your decisions. Narratively, the game takes its time. The story unfolds gradually, revealing the twisted history of Sangavia and the deeper truth behind the vampire hierarchy. Choices are rarely black and white. You're often forced to pick between two bad outcomes, and the game doesn't shy away from showing the consequences. These decisions don't just change dialogue, they shape the direction of the story, the perception of your character, and even which endings become available. Visually, Vampire's Bloodlord Rising leans into atmosphere rather than realism. Lighting plays a huge role, especially during nighttime exploration. Shadows, fog, moonlight, and candlelit interiors all reinforce the feeling that you belong to the darkness now. Character models and environments aren't about hyper-detail, but about mood and tone, and that works in the game's favor. It feels like a gothic fantasy brought to life, rather than a sterile open-world checklist. And then there's co-op. You can experience the entire game solo, but you can also invite friends to rule Sangavia alongside you. Co-op isn't tacked on, it's fully integrated. You can build castles together, explore the world as a team, and face the consequences of each other's choices. What makes this interesting is that everyone's decisions still matter. You might agree on how to build your domain, but you won't always agree on how to rule it, and the game lets that tension exist naturally. What really surprised me is how personal the experience feels. Even though you're building castles and commanding followers, the game never lets you forget that this story is about Dragos. About losing your humanity piece by piece, or maybe redefining it entirely. About deciding whether power corrupts you, or whether you were always capable of becoming something monstrous. And that's where Vampire's Bloodlord Rising really starts to shine, but there's still a lot more to talk about. The deeper systems, the long-term progression, the way choices ripple through the world, and how the game evolves once you fully embrace the night. As you spend more time in Sangavia, the game slowly shifts its focus from simple survival to long-term dominance. Progression isn't just about getting stronger numbers on your character sheet. It's about expanding influence, securing territory, and deciding how deeply you want to lean into your role as a Bloodlord. The more you grow, the more responsibility you carry, and the harder it becomes to stay neutral. The world reacts to power, and Vampire's Bloodlord Rising makes sure you feel that weight. Character progression is layered and deliberate. You're not just unlocking abilities for combat, but enhancing how you interact with the world itself. Vampire powers feel impactful because they open new possibilities rather than just increasing damage. Heightened perception changes how you approach exploration. Superhuman speed alters combat flow. Flying as a bat isn't just a cool feature, it redefines traversal, giving you a predator's perspective over the land you're trying to control. You stop feeling like a visitor in the world and start feeling like something that belongs above it. Combat continues to evolve as you gain access to stronger abilities and face more dangerous enemies. Early encounters teach you caution, later ones test mastery. Enemies become more aggressive, smarter, and more punishing if you rush in without preparation. There's a constant push and pull between feeling powerful and being reminded that you're not invincible. That balance keeps the game engaging far longer than a simple power fantasy would. The morality system quietly influences everything. It's not presented as a bar or a scoreboard you're meant to min-max. Instead, it manifests through reactions, dialogue, and consequences. Helping survivors might strengthen your reputation and bring new allies, but it can also drain resources you desperately need. Giving in to your hunger might make things easier in the short term, but it leaves scars on the world that don't fade quickly. Over time, you start realizing that every small choice stacks, and the game remembers more than you expect it to. The open world design supports this philosophy beautifully. Sangavia isn't just big for the sake of being big. It's structured to make you feel exposed, especially at night. Traveling alone through forests or abandoned villages carries tension, even when you're powerful. The environment constantly reinforces the idea that this land is dangerous and that survival is never guaranteed. Exploration feels meaningful because danger and reward are always tied together. Co-op adds another layer to this experience. Playing with friends transforms the game into something more dynamic and unpredictable. Decisions become conversations. Moral choices turn into debates. Building a castle together feels like a shared project rather than a solo grind. And exploring the world as a group changes how encounters unfold. At the same time, the game doesn't lose its identity when played co-op. It still feels personal, still grounded in consequence, just shared across multiple perspectives. What stood out to me the most is how the game embraces patience. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't overwhelm you with constant objectives screaming for attention. It allows you to exist in the world, to plan, to reflect, and to choose your next move carefully. That pacing makes the darker moments hit harder and the victories feel earned. When something goes wrong, it's rarely because the game cheated you. It's because you made a choice and accepted the risk. Visually and tonally, Vampire's Bloodlord Rising stays consistent. Gothic architecture, grim landscapes, and subdued color palettes all reinforce the fantasy without overdoing it. The game understands restraint. It lets atmosphere do the heavy lifting rather than drowning everything in effects. Combined with strong lighting and environmental design, it creates a world that feels oppressive, seductive, and dangerous all at once. By the time you've spent several hours with the game, something subtle happens. You stop asking what the right choice is. You start asking what your choice is. And that's where the experience really clicks. This isn't about winning or losing in a traditional sense. It's about shaping a legacy, about deciding whether Sangavia remembers you as a tyrant, a protector, or something far worse. Vampire's Bloodlord Rising succeeds because it respects the player. It trusts you to engage with its systems, to live with your decisions, and to carve your own path through a hostile world. It doesn't simplify the fantasy of being a vampire, it complicates it, and that's exactly why it works. And by the time you finally step back, look at your castle, your followers, and the world you've changed, you realize this was never just a vampire game. It was a story about power, identity, and what you're willing to sacrifice to rule the night. Thanks for watching, and if this is your kind of game, make sure to keep an eye on Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, because Sangavia is watching you back.
Rebuild our old strongholds. They are the veins of our power.
I'm honored to continue your legacy, Vorago. bloodline won't rise on its own. First, we need to rebuild the castle.
You really don't get it, huh? We're finally free. No chains, no master. For the first time in 100 years.
Ratsven, do you even realize what you're saying in Virago's presence?
If he's listening, maybe he'll admit what we all know. The world he built is gone. And you're clinging to its corpse like a widow in denial.
Virago brought strength and order to this land. Now it's shattered. And the Inquisition looks for any excuse to bring down what's left. The castle will be a symbol of our return, and a refuge for those like us.
Great. Build away. Just don't expect me to hold the hammer. Though, I do have an idea. Might even help you.
What do you mean?
Instead of talking, better start by building yourself some shelter. Virago wouldn't want the Dawn to roast his little prince. When you're done, come find me. I'll have something for you.